Happy Friday. Today, this video, anyway, I'm going to reflect on my experience applying to and going through the process of documentation and being accepted into the General Society of Mayflower Descendants. So what is that? It's a society put together, focuses on documenting bloodlines to people who came to the to North America via a ship named the Mayflower. So technically it's not correct to say it came to the United States of America because the Mayflower sailed in 1620 AD, so over 150 years before the United States of America existed. This ship made a voyage. It brought, at least for me, so my ancestor, so that's the introduction. Okay, yeah. So who am I a descendant of? I am a descendant of Edward Fuller. This is my certificate. I did get accepted and admitted into the society. And if you count him as generation 1, then I'm generation 15. So generation 15 American, but not pre-America American, not like I came to the United States after it was a country. Or not me, sorry, my ancestors. Not that. Though there were some of my family that did that. Some were Native Americans, so already here, even Asians immigrating over a land bridge. But this is one of the European bloodlines. So he came from England, and there were kind of 3 general categories of passengers on the Mayflower. There were people seeking kind of refuge from religious persecution because they didn't agree with the religions, and so they're called Puritans. So Edward Fuller falls into that category. So you could say, in today's terminology, like seeking asylum. However, unlike refugees of today, who kind of have, compared to these people, have it really easy because they kind of everybody moves them as opposed to them moving. It's a mix. Modern technology makes it easier, if nothing else, and there are applications kind of thing where refugees can apply and go wherever they want. That did not exist in the 1600s. That was reality was, if you want to survive, you got to find a way to survive because none of that infrastructure existed. So it's just the reality of the situation. And so my ancestor falls into the category of the religious people seeking refuge and trying to survive because their religion did not agree necessarily with the predominant religions in Europe at the time. So that's one of the kind of categories of descendants, or not descendants, passengers. Another category is crew, so there were people who operated the ship. And then the third kind of category are the people who were like statesmen, might be a good word for, like the kind of like the business people, the people just trying to survive and escaping religious persecution. And then there were the crew. When I've gone through and kind of looked at the people, those are 3 broad categories, and it might be more nuanced than that, but those are kind of the broad ones I could identify. So if you count Edward Fuller as like 0, so the starting point, then I'm a 14th generation bloodline descendant of Edward Fuller of England. So that's kind of some of it. What got me going on this? So I grew up, it's not like it's new news. I grew up and I knew that it's through my grandma. I'm part of the Gordon clan of Scotland, and we were raised to know where we were from, what regions of modern day Europe we're from, including family names and stuff like that. And this was one that was kind of, you are descended from somebody who came over on a Mayflower, then some people are like, how do you actually know that? And so it was like, and I've kind of got that my whole life. So I was like, you know what? Why don't we just go back through over 400 years of documentation to see. And so, but when I started this, it wasn't over 400 years of documentation. So I actually started this process in 2017, and when applying, I had to put forward this is who I'm descended from, and here's all of the steps. So I actually had to do all of that groundwork at initial application, and I sent that in 2018. And then from that point, they go, okay, this is a match, this isn't a match. If it is a match, here's all the new paperwork you need to find and provide copies of. And so that point, so approximately 2018, it took me and the society 4 years to get through all of the documentation proving that I am a bloodline descendant of Edward Fuller. And then at the end of it all, one of the exciting things I thought was I am in Washington State, so it's the Washington State Society of Mayflower Descendants. It's like the Washington State chapter, kind of. And they have something called the Evergreen Log. In the spring 2022, there's a welcome aboard section, and it has my name on it, and then the number, Edward Fuller, 14. I don't know if that's you or not. So that's counting him as 0. I'm a 14th bloodline descendant. 14th generation bloodline descendant of Edward Fuller. So that came out, that's publication. I've also gotten, as part of, there's like dues each year, and then I think my guess of how it works is you go through the application, you get approved, if you're actually, kind of thing, go through it all. If you're admitted, there's annual dues. If you fall off, you don't have to go through all that again. I think you do. There's like, you do have to go through something again, but yeah. And then one of the things I do get with my membership is the Mayflower Quarterly magazine. So it's kind of stuff related to just keeping up the society and just our family, like, kind of thing. As people who are admitting this are in family in some form or another, if they're a Edward Fuller descendant. For me. And so the reflection part partially is just covering kind of how this kind of concluded, what it was like. What was it like? So at each stage they ask for more documentation, and you have 1 year to get the documentation in from the time they ask for it, or you have to start over. So there is actually a very big time component to it, especially I started researching, okay, who am I descendant, that in 2017, sent it in 2018. So there was a number of, if they ask for stuff, how the heck am I going to find it? Because I was living in California at the time. And then I moved back to Washington in 2019. So Washington State. And so there was a move in all of this where I was like, okay, I need to find documentation. And then finding my documentation versus I had to go back a few generations and find documentation. And like seeing a birth certificate of people from, we have like the physical copies of stuff from like the 1800s and stuff. And it's just, it's an interesting thing going back through documentation. And it's an interesting thing helping piece together a bloodline train of documentation that goes back to over 150 years before the United States of America ever existed, before the Declaration of Independence was ever written. This is paper that's older than that. So it's a kind of an interesting thing. It has been very stressful. I think there's the part of the process where, like, is this a scam? Like, which sounds terrible, but like, with the world we live in and the number, like, it's not a scam call kind of thing, but it was just kind of like, do I know, like, I had a family member go through this, so I knew that it was a good thing, like, in the society checked out as real and stuff like that, but just, there's kind of always that, not always that fear, I hope not always, and I hope if you go through this, it's not a fear. So, but yeah, just kind of quelching that. And then I'd say perhaps the biggest fear I had in all this was like, not a fear of paperwork, but like, it's like, there's this thing of like, oh, we're descended by blank, and anybody can say that, right? There's a lot of liars in this world who would say something like that, and they just try to build up their reputation on that lie being true, like people misinterpreting it. And so it's an interesting thing going through over 400 years of documentation and helping put that story together. They have some paperwork, I have some paperwork. How do we make the full story here? Is it a fit? Right? It's taking this something that's been said in my family and opening it up to, is this even true? So it's not a fear of documentation. It's facing the reality of, what if we're not? And we've been saying this my whole life. And that was not the case. I am a bloodline descendant, and we have documentation, and a lot of documentation. It's not like it's one document per person. Like there's some people where there's 5 pieces of documentation just documenting the chronology. And this goes back 15 generations, well, including me. So it's kind of the level of documentation is, it's high quality, and they expect high quality documentation. So I think it's actually it's amazing in the sense that my family cared enough to document, kind of thing. And so that's pretty cool. It was a bit stressful. Some of the things they'd ask for, my parent, like I would be going with, after I moved home to and living with my parents, I was kind of do you even know what that is? Like there's and then we'd be like, no, and we'd look through everything and look through all of the kind of piles of paperwork and documentation we have for a bunch of different family members, couldn't find anything, be like, we have no idea what this is, and be like, okay, I'll look for you guys. And then there was like one of those where they actually found it for us. So don't be afraid, if you go through the process, don't be afraid to be like, I don't know, and I don't think so, but I also don't know. Because sometimes the people, the historian, so the Washington State chapter historian, will be like, oh, have you tried this? Kind of thing. And so, it was like, no, that did not even occur to me to look there for this record. And so that's kind of, yeah, it's a really great opening oneself up to, is this true? Can we even prove this? Document this even more so, but proof is nice, but documentation is better. And yeah, can we do that? And then being able to say, I don't know if we have that. Because then that was a really scary one for me. There was something for my granddad and my grandma, and we couldn't find it, and I was just like, how much would that suck? We don't get into the society because we are bloodline descendants, but I'm missing this piece of documentation. But no, it was saved in a national or state archive or something like that. And I was like, well, that's pretty cool. It also reinforces having archives of information. So yeah, that was, yeah, that wasn't necessarily something that I was, the fears kind of evolved as the process went on. So it took me approximately 5 years to get through the entire process, which is, yeah, but less, I think it was less than 4 years, or approximately 4 years. Wait, this is March. So I got my official letter in March 2022. It's dated March 2022. So it's, I think, a little under 4 years to go through. It did not drag on. It was kind of always on my mind during those 4 years, or less than 4 years. So that's what I'll say about that. Anything else? Not really. Am I happy? Yeah, last thing. Am I happy I did it? I am very happy I did it. I learned about my family. I've always been one for but for nonfiction, for fact, for documentation, and to actually see documentation, and to hold in my hands papers from like the 1800s and 1700s and stuff like that. That's my own family tree. It's very cool, and to document that my family tree extends over 100, to actually have physical documentation somewhere of me and my bloodline ancestry, to have it kind of safe and confirmed, ratified with a certificate even, given to me, presented to me, as that goes back over 150 years before the country I live in even existed. It's very cool. It's like, people talk about the founding fathers of the United States of America, and it's kind of like, well, if we're talking about people living here who did not originally live here, a change from Native American land to non-Native American land, that started over a century before the Declaration of Independence was ever written, before the Constitution of the United States was ever written. And the Mayflower is a healthy reminder of that. And so it's just kind of like a way of, can discount those people who say the founding fathers were United States presidents. It's kind of like, well, if we wanted to accept the full reality and how long it takes for something to kind of reach that point, that gotta go back to the early 1600s and late 1500s, kind of. Yeah. But so a greater appreciation for just how narrow-minded the American press can be in promoting the images they want to see, or the history they want to promote, as opposed to reality. So that's been very helpful. Can kind of be like, can turn the TV off because it doesn't even speak the truth to begin with. So that's really nice closure in a form.